Thank you for staying with us. Our apologies for that abrupt end to the news, but we proceed from there with the news review. And we have two guests, Kweku Painter. He's a lawyer. He was in the studio for the first time a few days ago, and now we have in the studio as well, or was it even yesterday? And we have in the studio as well former president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afeo Money. Both of them joined me for a conversation. Before we get into the newspapers, though, this segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering men free prostate screening and women as well fertility screening for free. Here's where you can locate them at Spintex here in Accra, opposite the Shell signboard. There's also Kumasi, Kronumabwehian behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Esiama in Zima. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0244 0274, I beg your pardon, 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But let's get into the papers now with our guests. Before we do so, this question I'll be putting to my guests, and I'm putting to you out there as well. If you can, share your thoughts with me on Joy News on Facebook, on social media, the live stream. I'd love to hear from you. Would you be willing to pay more taxes if the taxes would translate into better development? Our roads, hospitals, everything in between. Would you be willing to do that? Already, we're paying some of the highest taxes around. Others would say, well, if you look at the comparative between us and other countries, well, maybe there's still a gap that we could fill. But I'm putting out that question today, especially on the back of something I discussed with Dr. Theo Champong yesterday. Now they're talking about supposedly celebrity tax, where influencers on social media, masters of ceremony, like what I do from time to time, apart from the withholding tax, the 7.5% that you would pay on gigs of a certain caliber. But I'm asking, if we were to generalize it, would you be willing to pay more tax if it could translate into better development? But on the other hand, we've seen the number of taxes we are paying already, which practically is translating into, let me put it bluntly, not much. I would have said nothing, but not much. So what's your take? Would you do it? I had a conversation with a friend yesterday in the United States, and he said, look, even if they want to take 50, 60% of my salary, I'm okay with it. Why? If something is happening to me and I call for an ambulance, within 5 minutes, I'll have an ambulance right here to assist me. I would go to the health facility and get top-notch, treatment from the health facility. I would never get anything close to that in Ghana, and that's why I'm willing to pay my taxes here. What do you think? Share your thoughts with me via our social media stream. Mr. Painter, a very good morning to you, sir. Mr. Painter,
good morning, sir.
Great to have you. What Hello? Is your I can hear you, Mr. Painter. What's your take on taxes vis-a-vis what I said? Hello, Mr. Painter.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mr. Painter. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, I was just posing a question to you on taxes. To you and everyone else. Did you get the question?
You said whether we'll be willing to pay more taxes for better services. Is that not so?
Yes, and whether you have hope that if we did, that would actually happen, like we see in other jurisdictions.
I have my readout. The problem with Ghana and with everything that we do has got more to do with management than anything else. We pay all the taxes. The real issue is whether we're getting value for money. In other words, the last time on this show, I told you about how we pay for street lights every time we pay for electricity bill. They take all that money and nobody even tells us where that money goes and what they use it for. And therefore, all our streets are dark. Where I live, street lights are exhibition lights. In other words, you only get them occasionally. And so that's it. That's a classic example. I wouldn't know what else I must be talking about. We pay for everything. We pay for health. We pay for whatever. Meanwhile, the services are as poor as you can imagine. So that's the problem that we have in Ghana. And even every time the tariffs go up, I mean, the tariffs have been going up all the time, water, all the utilities. It's not much. The place that I live, I mean, for more than 5-6 days, our electricity is half current. I mean, it's whatever. I mean, we are now used to. It's as if there's a competition between Ghana Water and electricity about who is bad at doing what. I mean, that's it. It's a competition. I mean, that's the new norm. That's the new contract that we have with them, that they compete to show who is really bad at delivering services. And we are used to it. And nonetheless, they just increase the tariffs within how many weeks or how many months. So that's the recurrent thing that we have in this country. And I personally, I can only pray about it. But I don't honestly believe that things are going to improve merely because we paid more taxes. The little that we pay, they don't show us how effectively they are using it. That's about it. That's my honest view about this subject.
For you, I feel money in the studio. Your take. You've been to other jurisdictions many times. You've seen what happens
Certainly,
there.
yes.
And you've also seen what happens here. Recently, after the rain, was it on Friday? Flooding everywhere.
Even in certain areas like where I live, around Atlanta Commandos.
Oh, that place.
It is,
I have a very
It is terrible. It is
knowledge of
terrible.
what happens
Yes. It is terrible. So there's a need for both parties of the social contract to fulfill their part of the bargain. Government has a responsibility to tax the citizenry, and the monies so accrued should be used to provide basic necessities of life, like roads, and as my brother said, electricity. Most of the traffic lights are not functioning as we speak this morning. And this is an open invitation to disaster.
True.
Instead
I mean, go right down the road here. Just when you're making the turn from the traffic light and the Atenka junction, if you like. Those traffic lights have not worked for a while now. Both of them, right before that traffic light and then at the turn. They've not worked. And that's not the only place. Go through some of the major routes in Accra. I think right next to the Holy Spirit Cathedral, those traffic lights have also not been working for a while. Coming from Ridge, if you wanted to negotiate towards Kanda, those traffic lights have not worked. All the way to Accra High and the Swiss Embassy, crossing over, those traffic lights have not worked in a while.
And this is unthinkable. And what does it take for the authority to fix traffic lights? You know, motorists do not need to go through this heritage experience. And meanwhile, we have scores of police personnel visibly on the roadside, and we should at all times know areas whose traffic lights are not working. And the best thing to do, the basic thing to do, is to deploy policemen to regulate traffic and to avoid disaster. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Right.
So again, a clarion call goes to the authorities. MTTD, please, if the traffic lights are not working, with urgent promptitude, deploy your men to prevent accidents from happening.
Well, that is the charge, whether they will follow it or not. I'm already seeing some responses coming through, which I find interesting. And I'm bringing this up again on the back of, I felt so irked in my spirit. You know, the chief director at the Ministry of Finance at the last Graphic Stanbic business meeting was talking about paying more taxes and COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war, and we are not paying more taxes, and we should look at other countries. And, you know, look at us. After all we are paying, look at us and where we are. Mikhail says, why pay more when they will just squander it? When you have this kind of thinking, it's because of what people have seen. And when people see that, they'll obviously not be willing. But in other jurisdictions, when over time they have seen that my taxes translate into X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D for me, and these things will ensure that I have longevity, for example, my life, my quality of life is so high. Why would you not want to pay? But you're giving me what I'm giving. The other day when it rained, I was literally risking my life going through certain places because of the level of flooding.
On Friday.
You have water up to your tires. You know, if you're using a saloon car, you're not using a pickup or a four-wheeler. You have it up to your tires and you have to go slowly. Afraid that maybe water could enter your engine and that could result in disaster. You can't get it. I mean, and you expect me to pay more.
It's also true, and the flip side is also true, that many Ghanaians are outside the tax net. So why is making...
A few are being overtaxed.
Yes, why is making effort to rope them in the tax net? It is also important, it is necessary, it is of urgent necessity for the authority to ensure that the payment of tax crystallizes into provision of basic necessities of life.
Well, we pray someday, like the Israelites in the Bible, someday we pray that we'll reach that land flowing with milk and honey. They wandered 40 years in the desert, a journey that some say would have taken actually 40 days or maybe just a little more than that. Maybe we are on our own wandering in the desert with our misleaders, as I call them. And hopefully someday we'll arrive at Canaan, the promised land.
And the time is now.
The time ought to be now.
Yeah.
It must be now. And that is why people cannot take for granted the demonstrations and the youth. I was just watching, you know, someone was saying he had come from a faraway place for the demonstration a few days ago. And you can't let me come here and you think you can push me around. I came from a faraway place to Accra just to join the demonstration. Just imagine that.
And the message...
Traveling from...
the
it's
signal
quite a
is so clear.
So clear.
So clear.
But it appears...
You ignore it at your own peril.
No. Let's get into the papers. The Daily Graphic this morning, economic growth to surpass IMF forecast. That's according to the Bank of Ghana. Okay. Heart diseases, stroke leading causes of death. That's according to a study. Let's take better care of ourselves. Alan's third force agenda, farce or reality. I see you smiling. President urges world leaders to prioritize prevention of NCDs and addiction to betting by youth. Worrying, right, Reverend Mante? I totally agree. Recently, I was doing something and someone proposed a bet, and I said, no, my principles, I don't bet. But you have a lot of young people doing this. What jobs, what opportunities have you created for them? Economic opportunities.
Sure.
Our constitution gives us certain economic rights. Economic rights. Of course, enforceability, that becomes another issue in courts, while we've had different cases, you know, bordering on that. But you don't provide anything for them. A lot of people, well-educated, are out there with nothing to do. So that's what we call underemployment. Okay, not unemployment, underemployment. So you can have someone who's an architect, an accountant, yet what they are doing is very different from the skill sets because they have to put food on the table.
Sure.
So let's get into the stories. Alan Chamating, who has nurtured presidential hopes since 2007, yesterday confirmed his resignation from the MPP and announced a new ambition to vie for the presidency in 2024 as an independent candidate. The former Minister of Trade and Industry said he offered a new hope beyond the duopoly of the MPP and the NDC and promised to establish and lead a new, quote, movement for change in Ghana, and one of inclusivity that he said would make room for the MPP and the NDC and other parties and political organizations should he win the presidential polls. I'm just wondering, though, if you're moving away from the NDC and the MPP, why now want to bring them back into? It's the same elements and the same thinking that you'll be bringing back. Now, while the Fourth Republic is not lacking in political parties of different persuasions, none had come close to usurping the supremacy of the MPP and the NDC. In spite of Mr. Chamating's supposed appeal, he appears to have a tall order reaching a height that established parties have struggled to attain. So the question is, can Alan do it? Can he shake up the system? Can he be that third force that we've supposedly been waiting for? Could this be the start of that? Maybe he will not be the sole person, but if this starts, then maybe Ghanaians will think outside of the NDC and the MPP. Is that possible right now? Who knows? Lawyer Painter, what's your thinking on his resignation and going independent?
As for Chamating's resignation, this is not the first time he has resigned. I'm sure it raises a lot of issues, but then I would rather comment about his resignation. That this is the second time Chamating has resigned
Indeed.
from the MPP. We don't know when the third time is going to be. But we have to.
What are you intimating? What are you intimating? Are you
No,
are you suggesting he's a perennial runaway, if you like?
Worse than that.
Worse than that.
You are.
Okay.
It tells more even on the NPP's own type of politics. Let me tell you what. You know, it took President Obama to come to Ghana to come and tell us that Africa needs institutions and not personalities. And talking about institutions, we are talking about principles in place in order to build institutions. Ghana has for a long time been a country of men. It's about personality. It's about who you are. And you are tolerated, you are allowed to do things not on the basis of principle. And I want this matter to hit very well at the MPP. Because when Chemase resigned, a resignation is a resignation. A resignation is a voluntary decision taken by a person who says that I don't want to be a part of this group. That somehow it went through all kinds of circles, and at the end of the day, it turned out that the party then set up, or its legal committee came out that the resignation had actually not been accepted. It was a funny decision that a so-called legal team of a major political party would take. And with due respect to whoever took those decisions at that time, it was an unprincipled decision. I'm calling them out. Because a resignation, it was done because it was Chemase. You know, the FPP has crafted for instance so-called founding members. And it appears different rules apply to a so-called founding member. Chemase, in any case, if you resign from a party and you come back, you go and join the queue. Because you resigned and you came back and ought to join the queue. But somehow they managed to engineer the whole show in such a way that he still became a presidential candidate. Because somebody believed that even if he became a candidate, he would still be beaten in the main elections or in the MPP's own internal elections. That was a funny thing that they did. And that is what has encouraged him this time to stay long enough. And when things are not going smooth for him, he is now claiming to resign a second time. Why are they not going after him this time? Why are they not? You know, that's the way we create. So at the end of the day, we never get principle because a principle is either wholly kept or wholly sacrificed. There is no way that you can begin to make arrangement or do halfway and do halfway. But that is what we have done in this country up to date. So I'm very, very happy that Chemase is making it bite. And let it bite the party. And if Chemase eventually stands as a presidential candidate and manages to pull any votes, those votes are likely to come from the MPP polls. And we'll see how it affects the party's electoral card.
I'll come back to you briefly on that. Let's veer slowly because we're talking about leadership on the continent, and we have an interesting bit we're introducing. We're going to cross over to Ethiopia, where African leaders have set out a new path for attaining inclusive and sustainable African or economic growth and development for the continent with a long-term 50-year development trajectory. Well, my colleague Mamavi Osuabwaje is actually part of that high-level delegation. She finds herself in Addis Ababa and connects with us live from there. Mamavi, if you can hear me, well, I don't know what it's like currently in Addis Ababa, but give us a rundown of what is happening there.
All right, so Ben, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're right. You know, back in May 2013, the AU set the Agenda 2063. It's been 10 years of that. So what's happening today, and it's a one-day evaluation meeting. What's happening is an evaluation of what the AU set as its 10-year part of the implementation plan for the first 10 years. The whole focus, even though the meeting is going to be talking about the 7 aspirations that the AU set for itself, the focus more would be on democratic governance, peace and security, continental integration, economic development, along those lines. With regards good governance, some people would say that we've made a bit of progress because in the past you'd find that leaders have stayed in power for a really, really long time. Somehow we've managed in some of the situations to get them out. But what we haven't succeeded in doing is linking good governance, I guess, to development, which for ordinary people, that's That's what we're looking at. So this meeting basically, which has been put together by the All Africa Conference of Churches, the Konrad Adenauer, the African Union, and ECOSOC, which is a body within the African Union, is to look at the entire goal, but zoom in particularly on the parts of good governance and security, and then measure the successes, look at the challenges, and then look at the way forward. It's interesting that in Ghana, the conversation has suddenly just changed to Alan going independence. But if you look at it in terms of good governance, that ultimately, if you look at the reason why he's going independence, you can say ultimately is for the purposes of good governance and Ghanaians essentially experiencing development. That's why every leader wants to be, at least they tell us they want to be president, except that when they get into power, the conversation changes. So Ben, that's why I am in Addis Ababa this morning. The meeting just got underway. The first panel conversation is ongoing now. So throughout the day, I'll be bringing updates in terms of what has been reached. And I will be also interviewing some of the panelists because we have some high-level members of the African Union, ECOSOC, and some CSOs all gathered here this morning.
Well, that's an interesting, discussion definitely that you're going to be having there. And I'm hoping that we're going to be getting all the scoop from you live from Addis Ababa. Mama Vio Usu-Abwaji, thank you. That is my colleague Mama Vio Usu-Abwaji, all the way from Ethiopia, bringing us the scoop there on that trajectory as far as the African continent and the AU are concerned. So coming to you in the studio, Afel, interesting development there in Addis Ababa. But
certainly yes.
There are a lot of people who even question, the AU and its
capacity.
And its relevance, capacity, like you keep mentioning. So what is happening here with this third force, supposedly proposed by Alan, also feeds into that kind of conversation because it impacts the economy. Your take?
We expect the AU to take a hard look at the downward democratic spiral in Africa, especially in West Africa. They should take into consideration the causal factors of the democratic backsliding in our parts of the world. We have leaders who believe in sit-tight mentality.
What mentality?
Sit tight.
They will, let's stay put.
Yes. They will change their constitutions, elongate their tenure in office, invite dissensions, upheavals, and the end product is coup d'etat. And AU, strangely, will turn a blind eye to this development. And what do you expect? So it came as a huge act of hypocrisy, duplicity on the part of AU and ECOWAS to attempt to force Niger, Mali, and others to go back to democratic rule. Meanwhile, they turn a blind eye to what is happening in Cote d'Ivoire. Alassane Ouattara changed the constitution, served 2 terms, and is now serving 3 terms. And Alassane Ouattara had the moral authority to back the invasion of Niger by ECOWAS troops. Nothing has fizzled out. They were given 1 week. The other day, Tinubu extended the 1 week to 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's another part of joke. So the time has come for the AU to take a long and hard look to prevent what is happening.
But coming from the AU down to Ghana, because some of the very things other countries are going through, we are also facing.
Certainly,
right here in this country. What do you make of Alan's third force agenda? Farce or reality?
We need to understand where he's coming from. He is a very astute politician, a major force politically, who sees his own party as an impedimental force, impedimental block to his presidential ambition. The lawyer referred to his resignation in 2008, and according to Allah, what prompted him to resign again compelled him to quit his own MPP party. He said that Bishop Richard Galley once said that it's only a fool who doesn't change his mind. And he came back and he thought things would improve, and they didn't. But students of leadership will always refer to 4 requirements every leader needs. Number 1, you need intelligence quotient.
Right.
You also need emotional quotient.
Emotional intelligence, yeah.
You also need social quotient, the way you relate with people.
True.
And then the 4th one, adversity quotient. The first 3, Alan has them in abundance, and even super abundance. Okay. He's intelligent, he has a face, he has a voice, he has the looks of a president. But he's a presidential material, and I would dare say that he will be consigned to history as one of the best presidents Ghana will never have, or Ghana didn't have.
You think so?
Yeah.
You feel he'll never become president?
Sure. Because
you feel Alan Chamating will never become president?
His presidential dream was aborted on the very day he was annihilated at the Super Delegates Conference.
Wow.
Yeah. That was it. And so Alan is facing reality. No. The MPP machine cannot lead him to the promised land as a president.
So he must go his own way.
So he must go his own way. But at the same time, we also need to theater this cataclysmic decision to go independent.
I mean, it's either going to shake our entire political system if he even gets 10% of votes, for example. Because that would be, like you said, borrowing your word, cataclysmic, either for the NDC or the MPP. But people feel more on the side of the MPP.
Yeah, certainly, yes.
To him. But on the other hand, it probably is, if you've listened to commentary, following his announcement yesterday, it probably is a one-way ticket from the MPP. That this must be it, right?
Sure. So, as I said, he needs, I believe he's done so, to filter his move into the tight weave of reality. And the reality is that even though he's going independent, he can attract votes, especially from the MPP fold. But the reality is that he's driving a defective or ineffective machine, which cannot lead him to the presidency.
You agree with those who say that going independent against these 2 juggernauts, the NDC and the MPP, I mean, you simply can't win that race.
You simply cannot win.
Can Alan pull a surprise?
It is not within the bounds of reality to pull a surprise. He can. And
the surprise wouldn't be the surprise wouldn't be necessarily winning the election.
Certainly, yes.
But you feel he can be a spoiler?
He can be a spoiler. He can be a spoiler because yesterday I was monitoring your station, and soon after the announcement, that seismic announcement, you did a fantastic job by going to Kumasi to talk to ordinary people.
Yeah, I listened.
Yes, and you could see that his message is resonating.
With some of them.
And if you multiply the numbers you spoke to, you can imagine the number of votes he will chip off.
So Dr. Baumia, should he or Kennedy Japan, should they become flag bearers or flag bearer of the MPP? They are going to be on the receiving end. They are going to be the losers of this move.
So Alan is aware of the damage he can inflict.
And you think he's doing this intentionally, right?
If
the party has rejected me, then
yes,
he will also feel my wrath.
Yeah, he's done his calculations. As an MPP, our own party is now an impedimental block to my presidency. And he cited the factors. Monetization, intimidation, and all that. And in politics, you need, number one, mobilization. Politics is about mobilization and organization. And in a part of the world, now, monetization has come to be overshadowed two main factors of mobilization and organization.
Right.
And one said organization decides everything. But in the present world, monetization and organization will decide.
Well, we'll see how that pans out. 2024 is just around the corner. Two quick stories, and then you can come in with your papers. Economic growth to surpass IMF forecast. That's according to the Bank of Ghana. And Ghana's economy is bound to grow twice higher than the 1.5% projected by the IMF at the end of the year, the Bank of Ghana has projected. The central bank based its projection on the strong economic growth measured by the gross domestic product growth for the first and second quarters and positive outlook indications given by the Bank of Ghana's composite index of economic activities. Under the country's $3 billion program with the IMF, economic growth for 2023 is projected to be 1.5%. Of course, if we keep spending the way we are and adding to our public debts the way we are, 6.3 billion in 2 months, then I don't know. But let's see how those projections pan out. Heart disease and stroke leading causes of death. The leading causes of death in the country now, if you didn't know, are heart diseases and strokes. The acting director of the National Cardiothoracic Center, Professor Mauto Tete, has disclosed. Quoting a research conducted by a trainee of the center, Mr. Tete said high cholesterol, that is fat, so in the blood, known as dyslipidemia, stood out as the worst cause of heart attacks. I'll come to you, Kweku Painto. Much of a concern, right? Especially looking at our health system. Quick thoughts?
I mean, it's not enough to know what is killing us, but it's better to know what to do to avoid what is killing us. So these researchers, when they do it, we welcome them. But then they should come with a pack of advice as to what lifestyle changes that people like you and I should be doing. Because essentially, this is no longer a middle class thing. Now we are getting very poor people getting what originally was known as rich people's diseases and stuff. Because then, I mean, people like you and I, you are still at the city. I don't know when was the last I went on a jog and so forth and so on.
Interestingly, I do that a lot.
I congratulate you. Encourage me to join you.
But I think the bottom line, you say the things we may not be doing. I think the first bit, medical checkups.
You're right.
That is the first bit, because any of these, when they are developing, I mean, it's just over a year since I went for my last test. This year, I have been a bit recalcitrant, but I'll get it done. You have to go for those tests. You check your lipids. Me, I check my kidneys, my prostate, my heart health. Basically, a full medical check. They'll check you out. Urine samples, blood samples, check what is going on in there. But most people don't do that, even in a 5-year period. No check. You could be walking someday and then you fall, and that's it.
Let me tell you an interesting story. Every year, the Ghana Bar Association, we hold our annual conference, and at the conference, we invite these doctors who come and do a medical clinic, and they take all the tests, they do a presentation and pronounce all of us dead people until they pronounce all of us as dead men walking.
Wow.
And strangely enough, we congregate the next year. This year, I'm sorry, I'm not making a comment about a particular person, but a gentleman attended the opening ceremony. The next day, he was dead. He wasn't sick.
Wow.
One lawyer attended the opening ceremony, said he wasn't feeling well, he wanted to go and come back, and the next day was dead, and it was all over our social media platforms, and everybody was asked what happened. But that has been the trend. Lawyers have been dying, and they never fell sick. So that's the danger of the kind of things. So the new researches, that's what is revealing. And I mean, like I said, thank you for telling us this medical checkup. Have you told anybody how much it costs you to do the kind of things? Because the last time I tried the University of Ghana Medical Center, master, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be an accountant, you have to be a professional to be able to afford the cost of it. But we talk about the ordinary folks. We talk about the people who are walking around Makola and all of those kind of things. How do they? That is a part of the problem that we have. Because now our medical facilities have become, facilities for the rich people.
Yeah.
And I'm being honest with you, even though University of Ghana Medical Center, they're doing really good job, master, you need to really have your pocket properly starched with cash in order to be able to use the facilities there. So
Yeah.
that's what we have done in this country. Even in our medical services, when we're growing up, Mankesim to Sopon, you can take free transport, you go to the hospitals, free medical care. Today with insurance, they don't even want to see your medical insurance list or whatever they call it, mental health.
So
They don't want to see it.
that is all that you're saying because of time. All that you're saying is very true. Very true. And I think that is a major impediment. That is part of why some people simply wouldn't go, because they are thinking of the money they will spend. But on the other hand, you see, you can't value your health in monetary terms. Your health goes beyond money. I mean, you see people in hospital and the agony. If they could pay for health, they would, but they can't. So that's the end game. So some way, somehow, even if it's the basic tests, just to know what is happening within your body, we must all try. I'm putting it out there because I do. And I've said before in this country that, look, I don't spare myself any little that I can spend on my multivitamins, on trying to stay healthy. I do my hike. I don't want to mention where for security reasons. I do my weekly walk. I have a mini gym that I use. I try because I said yesterday, you don't want to fall sick in this country. That's one. Health institutions, especially the public ones.
And
I'm
the
sorry.
cost so prohibitive.
Exactly. So you want to manage yourself and conduct these tests as much as you can, else it could be disastrous.
And we need to deepen the culture of physical exercise. Very, very important.
Let's quickly get into the headlines from the papers you have, and we'll
Ghana
wrap the
Times,
conversation.
as usual, is leading with Alan Cash resigns. And
We've deliberated on that.
on that. And then Interior Minister tasks journalists to avoid hate speech.
Okay.
And the Bible, which is a perennial spring of wisdom and an infallible guide of conduct, reminds us that death and life are in the power of the tongue.
True.
Yeah, and you can relate it to what happened in Rwanda, even though it has been overflogged, but it's still relevant. Where it took a reckless journalist who went on a reckless station to make a reckless pronouncement, and that's resulted in the destruction of precious lives, running into close to 1 million human lives. So, as journalists, we have a responsibility imposed by the dictates of our profession to sieve hate speech from what special politicians make. And this underlines the need for proper gatekeeping.
Okay.
We are gatekeepers. You know, as for reckless comments, they will fly left, right, and center. But it is our responsibility to ensure that we do not feed
those
our listening public with so reckless pronouncement.
Maybe just the headlines from your next paper.
Protect. That's the Finder. MPP urges calm following Alan's resignation, and we hear that at 2 o'clock MPP will respond. But our caution is that they should not fight fire with fire.
True.
They should make it possible for Alan to come back for the two sides to sit down and negotiate his return, if possible.
Well, let's see how that pans out. Unfortunately, the time is not on our side. Just to leave you with this headline from the Economy Times. Public debt now stands at 575.5 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Painter, I'll just give you some 30 seconds as we cap off the conversation. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we can. I'm talking about our economy. About 5 or 4 years ago, Ghana's economy was the highest growing economy in the world. We managed to reach that distance. Don't understand, or I can't even then why we cannot reach that status again.
Okay.
So I believe I've got a lot of hope. I mean, doom sparrow.
Sparrow, right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kweku Painter is a lawyer. He joined the conversation. We also had joining us from right here in the studio, former president of the GJA, Afeo Money. Thank you so much for the conversation this morning and the insightful thoughts on Alan Kyerematen. Anyway,
Thank you.
so as we wrap, right before we get into sports, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, they are offering free prostate screening for men, free female fertility screening for women. Locate them in Accra Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Esiaman Zema. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next.